Hi, everyone, and welcome. I think it is 5 p.m. here in Sweden sharp. And when we go for these digital meetings, we are kind of really sharp on time, right? So a warm welcome from me. My name is Maria Olofsson, and I work at Uminova Innovation and Ignite Sweden. And we are so happy to have all of you here. I think there will join more people soon. I know that some are still might be in small meetings that I will tell you about shortly. So we are so happy to have this event, this seminar, where together with Ignite Sweden, Enterprise Europe Network, the Forestry Cluster, and Uminova Innovation. And we want to dive deeper into possibilities of how to collaborate within the forestry and mining. And actually, Uminova Innovation is one of Sweden's largest incubator up north in Sweden. And we started to collaborate with Canada due to Sweden Innovation Days in November last year. And Sweden Innovation Days was a huge matchmaking event where 10 different countries came together and were matching, starting to create value between startups and corporates. And we don't want to dive deeper into that right now, but actually we had Ignite North event, which is a matchmaking event, digital, of course, between startups and corporates right this afternoon. So altogether, 7 corporates has met 21 startups, 2 from Canada, 19 from all over Sweden, and we had 32 meetings. And it's all about to be open-minded to create new opportunities, new possibilities for business. And what Ignite Sweden is it is a tool for the incubators and science park in Sweden to use to help our startups to create pilots and new businesses. So with that said, I'm so happy that we have many of you startups here, corporates, and a full-packed event where you will be guided by one of the large corporates that has met so many startups. Johan, have you counted how many startup meetings you had?
No, actually I haven't. But it's a lot, and they give so much energy to have those kind of meetings. But it's a lot. I could tell you that.
So with that said, I'm so happy to hand over the word to you to guide us throughout this event.
Thank you so much, Maria. Well, good morning, good day, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm really happy to be here and to be a part of this event. So this breakout session, we will listen to 2 amazing pitches. I'm really interested in learning more about them. And we will get some valuable insight from a panel of experts with tons of experience when it comes to startups and corporate collaborations. My name is Johan Granström, and I work as Partnership and Business Development Manager for ABB. From the beginning, I am actually coming from the startup scene, but I have the last 10 years worked for ABB in the field of industrial automation and addressing process industries and including the mining sector. And I think it's quite interesting what we are looking at. If we look into the future, we have the climate change, but we also have all this technology development creating completely new opportunities for us. So I have the privilege to work both with large corporates as well as with startups. So that's really good. By fostering a breed ground for collaborations, we can increase the speed and the agility of innovation, because I think it's fundamental to have the capabilities to combine incremental and evolutionary innovation at the same time as you are taking those revolutionary steps needed to change towards a better world. this session is addressing two essential industries, I would say, which is particular of interest for Sweden as well as Canada. I'm talking about the forest industry and the mining industry. But it's also interesting for the rest of the world because these are both enablers for the transition to a more sustainable world. But why, one could ask? Well, looking into the paper and paperboard production in the world, it accounts for over 413 million tons on a yearly basis, which kind of helps us move into a more sustainable packaging of goods for transport. Woods also serves as an excellent and increasingly important source for sustainable alternatives for construction materials. By reducing the CO2 footprint quite dramatically compared to concrete and other things. And this is applicable to commercial buildings as well. One example is actually the newly constructed Skellefteå Culture Center in northern Sweden, which is a 20-floor tall wooden building, similar to the height of Ericsson Globe in Stockholm. And it is one of Europe's tallest wooden building today. Finally, forest byproducts is also used for other products such as lipstick, fuel, and a lot more. But what about the mining industry then? Well, the modern society are depending on metals really. It's everywhere around us. But to meet with climate change, their ability to become more sustainable is essential. Did you know, for example, that an electric train contains about 8 tons of copper? Or that an ordinary car has 20 kilos copper, but an electric one has 70 kilos of copper in it. Looking into harvesting solar energy, you will probably use solar panels, which contains metals such as aluminium, silver, lead, and tin. So it's everywhere around us. From ABB, we are participating in several different kind of projects, such as sustainable underground mining, to collaborate with a number of different mining companies. But we also collaborate a lot with startups. We have today, I think it's about 150 different projects that we made together with startups, and it's counting. And it's through our innovation growth hub called Synerleap. One of these examples I would like to mention is actually a company called Universes, who has their expertise within the field of image recognition technology. And from ABB side, we were working with robotics. And together we addressed one challenge in an underground mine, and that is about charging blast holes. That's a manual operation today that is quite related to hazards and risks. So today we combine our technology stack and actually create an autonomous solution, reducing the risk of that particular operation. And that kind of to wrap up this introduction, from my point of view, collaboration is the true enabler for the transition to a sustainable future. I am convinced of that, and that we're going to talk a lot more about. But the time has come to proceed to the next part of this session, pitching. And I'm really looking forward to these pitches. We have 2 exciting companies that will pitch for us right now. So first off, I would like to welcome Martin Englund, representing Logscom. Martin, the stage is yours. Martin doesn't seem to be with us right now. Now he's not with me.
But maybe
now. Welcome. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Now, myself. Oh, thank you, and nice to be here in this meeting. And it will be interesting to present our company Logscom for all of you. Roughly, we are a startup company by Uminova Innovation, and since a number of years ago, and for more or less 2 years ago, we start be able to sell our products on the market. So it's been a very interesting kind of a trip to do. And what we are doing more or less is to tag timber. So because there is a number of different qualities inside the logs. So a tree, it's looking the same on the outside, can have different properties inside it. So that depends a lot of the different kind of conditions for the ground where the tree have been grow up. For some kind of industry, it's a tree from one kind of area with some kind of specific ground condition has a perfect qualities for a specified final end product. And another tree from another kind of growing place, but look the same on the outside, will be a very bad option for this final product. So there is some kind of need to make it able to track the logs from the industry to the opposite, from the forest to the industry. So that's why we started making solutions to be able to tag and track the logs. And our concept has a base of a ink labeling system, so we can print a label on the end of the log, like a number or a text or a code. And today we have 2 systems on the market, especially the one we put on the forwarder, and the other one we put on the harvester. The harvester solution, we call the HTP, is still under development and testing. And the forwarder concept, it's a system that we have on the market since 2 years ago, and it's a good seller for us because the market, our customers, asking for system to make the manually tagging procedure with the automatic solution. So they will save time, make it a more safe working place, and so on by using our tagging concept. And thanks to that we have some product on the market, we will be able to add more functionality on this tag, like harvesting date for make it very easy, to make it easier for the industry, like a sawmill, to make a right priority by different logs. So they will keep having the fresh log in the sawmill instead of 2 old logs, for example, and so on. And as long as we go with a different kind of tagging system, we are able to add more data of the logs from the forest to the sawmill. So that's what we are doing for the moment in our startup. So if you will read more about us, then you can look on our webpage to get more information of our products. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting product you do have there. So I guess you're kind of also helping them to replace a manual operation today with a more automatic one using your products.
Yes, that's actually the main purpose for the moment, and we see it, and we see that we can use this system to make it more useful for catching data.
Really interesting. Thank you so much, Martin. We need to move on to the next runner. Thanks again. So next up for pitches is Dimitri from Tiger Robotics. Dimitri, welcome, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction and thank you for leading into this. I apologize for this being on a PDF. I am out in the field right now, but let me share my screen. I'll tell you a little bit about Tiger Robotics and what we do. If I can move that out of the way. So our company is called Tiger Robotics, and we use a tagline, "Your mind in a robot body," because our company started out as a search and rescue company. We were using virtual reality to put a person's mind into a remote body of a robot so they could do work in hazardous environments like nuclear facilities, disaster zones, mines, etc. And over a few, through our first few customers, we've pivoted a lot more to industrial settings like mining and forestry. And that is what I will talk to you about. So the goal of the company as it stands right now is to get robotics and robotic technology out of factories and into the unstructured world of construction sites, forests, etc. And our core belief is that comes down to not the robots themselves, but the way people interact with machines, the way we convey intent. With that in mind, we've developed two technologies and we put ourselves on there. One is called Iris XR. It is a software and hardware combined system, which puts a ruggedized VR camera into a remote vehicle or into a remote robot, with a person interacting with the robot using natural gestures while wearing a VR headset. You can see from the perspective of the robot, and you can manipulate the environment directly. What this allows us to do is, one, we can address parts of automation that are not solvable with AI. And some of our customers have said that when they're looking at a project, they evaluate it based on how much automation is available. And if there are certain technical roadblocks that they don't think they can solve at a reasonable cost or in reasonable time, they will abandon the whole project. What this lets them do is say, okay, we can get 90% of it done, and the last 10%, we're going to put a human in the loop, and I'll handle the last 10% that's very, very hard, and we still get the benefit of everything. The next part is our real-time trajectory planning and generation tools called Iris Pathfinder. That takes input either from a human, like Iris XR, from an algorithm or an AI, and it conditions those inputs to be executable on the machine. People are not very precise generally themselves. They need assistance. This helps. And AI systems are not always aware of the environment and the limits of the machinery. So this makes sure the motions are smooth, jerk-free, collision-free, and executable in some optimal amount of time or power. And of course, we come as part of every package, so they have services available from Tiger ourselves. What that lets us do is put a project, as opposed to being 100% human to 100% automation, whether that human is in a machine or boots on the ground, or 100% autonomous, where you might need to spend a lot of energy developing and a lot of money developing an autonomous solution. We can pick a point which covers as much automation as possible, but not so much where the cost of developing automation outstrip the available assistance from people. And that brings us to examples. So I'd like to share a couple of examples we've been working on. This is a full human in the loop system that we have built as a proof of concept for a local nuclear authority. This system was being tested for low-level radiological waste sorting. So after some work at a power plant, all of the clothing, masks, tools, filters get put into bags and need to be sorted into things that can be decontaminated, items that need to be destroyed, and items that need to be buried for long-term storage. And this was a human in the loop portion of it, where the dexterous work was done by me in this case, and some of the personnel from the nuclear plant. And then the robot would take over and perform the survey of the waste autonomously. On the flip side of this, we have a fully automated system that only has human intervention once in a while, that is currently deployed using Iris Pathfinder in a drilling application in the United States. This was co-developed by us, providing the software, and an industry partner in Ontario who developed the actual drilling rig. And currently a person supervises it, but we're working towards making this a completely lights out rig where it could be just left and perform its work for an extended period of time. And an interesting part about that project is that it's actually part AI driven, like I mentioned. So the rig recognizes the components that it needs to manipulate and does it itself. And that is another benefit of our Pathfinder system, because again, it conditions those inputs. So it only needs to receive, here's your next item to manipulate, go, and it itself plans collision-free movements. And finally, our other big project that I'd like to present is, I can't name the OEM. This is a stock image, so none of the labels on that image are related to anything we're doing, but we're also working on a combined human in the loop and AI system for an underground vehicle application as well. And this is us. Most of us met at a university lab and ended up doing this for a living. Thank you so much for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Dimitri. Thank you. So regarding questions, feel free to add them to the chat and we will raise them at a good point. Once again, thank both of you for great, interesting pitches. So we have come to the second part of the session, which is the panel discussion. And I'm so excited to gaining new insight from these experts that we have alongside. So I thought I should kickstart this by a short introduction of our panel. So first off, we have Kathleen Peterson. She's a PhD and Executive Director for Enterprise Europe Network Canada. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask you a short question. Your work is a lot about establishments and cultivation of collaborative partnerships between Canada, Germany, and Europe as a big. So why is this so important?
Well, I feel that establishing these connections between Canadian companies and researchers and European companies and researchers really allows everybody to access and take advantage of international best practices, as well as sort of the highest standard of technology. And these projects and partnerships as well lead to access to new markets and new networks, which I think is something that is top of mind for all companies.
That's great. Thank you so much. So the next participant is Regina Summer, which is the program director at Vinnova. Welcome, Regina.
Thank you very much.
So I wanted to ask you a first question. Vinnova, from my point of view, is a really important part of the Swedish innovation system, and you invest around 3 billion Swedish crowns annually to foster innovation. What are your main objectives, really?
Well, our main objective as the innovation agency, the National Innovation Agency in Sweden, is of course we identify challenges in our innovation ecosystem. We try to gather and help mobilize the right actors in the system to join forces, and then of course we fund the strategic projects. So those are, and in all we do is, we have the sustainable development goals in mind.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Then we have David Bowden, MBA and Senior Advisor at Mars Discovery District Cleantech. Welcome, David. First off, and I wanted to ask you a first question as well. Mars helps innovators to change the world, and you have today over 1,400 startups in your ecosystem. From your point of view, which one was the most memorable? Big question.
Yeah, I don't know why I got the hard question, maybe because I went last. I think that 20 years ago, when I was maybe more naive and younger as an engineer, the most attractive and memorable ventures were the ones with the most sophisticated or clever technology. And that's changed in the last 20 years for me as I've looked at lots of ventures. And now it's not the most sophisticated and it's not the biggest venture that makes them memorable. And which picking one is like picking your favorite country in the world that you like to visit. It kind of depends on the context. But what really makes ventures, and I could think of 3 or 4 in particular super memorable, are the founders. And they're not founders that just understand the technology. They actually understand how to get in and influence early adopters, business partners, and people like that. And now the surest sign of success, I mean, you have to have a useful idea, but you have to have a founder that knows business and understands the world enough to get it in, because being smart by its own is not going to succeed. So it's founders that make those ventures memorable for me.
Really great. Thank you so much. Last but not least, we have Anneli Lundmark, project manager for the cluster of forest technology. So welcome, Anneli. So I wanted to ask you a first question. The cluster of forest technology is kind of an accelerator for sustainable forestry and connects the industry with research and startups. Why is it important for you as an industry to work with startups and SMEs?
Thank you for the introduction, Johan. That's a very good question. As you mentioned, we are the stepping stone towards the future of forestry. And we, together with our member companies, the forest companies, we develop technology for tomorrow's forestry. And for us, we have actually, maybe we might be the organization in this group who hasn't actually been working with startups for that long. We've been around since 2010, and we started with our member companies and for them to collaborate more with researchers and the academy. But since around 2019, we started with our new project where we collaborate more with startups and SMEs. And I believe that that's basically one of our, like, the success story. We had an excursion last year. I think we were around 90 people participating, and we had 7 stations where most of the stations were startups or SMEs. And without the collaborations with startups, we would not have had that excursion. So yeah, I would say that's one of the reasons why we want to work with startups. It's really important, and they come with new ideas, and we can match them with our member companies or the forest companies or researchers. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And that's kind of it's a nice bridge into the first topic, which is pretty much how can we together solve the technical and sustainability challenges that we do have in these two industries. So I was thinking, Anneli, if we can just keep up around that. Could you mention one of these cases that was part of that, and what was the key success of that collaboration really?
This is a hard one when I have to pick one, but I can mention 2 startups. The first one that we collaborated with is Arboreal, where we went from actual idea to implementation. And our project that is called Company-Driven Forest Innovations. The idea was to go from traditional ways of measuring the forest into the digital era. So by using our AR, we can now follow like a red line and measure the trees along the transects much easier than the more old-fashioned way. And another feature is the automatic tree species detection, which is also found in their new app or their app on App Store. So that was one of the collaborations. Another success story, I would say, is Nordluft, which is it is a startup with a mission to use drones together with automations technology for efficient and sustainable material handling. So this project that we have is a perfect example of the match between a startup and researchers at SLU. the idea is the precision-based fertilization of plants using their drones and their drone platform. But we are still developing that project, and we have extended the idea now. Yeah, so
really interesting. Thank you. And I was thinking when you were telling us this, I was thinking that one challenge or maybe one key factor about successful collaboration maybe is finding the right partner to help you out, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking to move over to Katalin, you're moving a lot with building those bridges between companies and countries. How can that kind of effort help out in finding the right partners to innovate?
So I think finding the right partner is absolutely crucial, and something that it's something that my organization has been concerned with for quite some time. And we help companies to do that in a number of different ways. We organize matchmaking missions, brokerage events. We work through the Enterprise Europe network. So we have tools like the virtual brokerages, like this event. We also have the partnering database there. One of the things that I have found is really crucial right from the get-go is helping companies define and really kind of narrow down precisely what it is that they want to do, what it is that they have to offer, and what it is that they want in a partner, whether it's a particular technology, a particular capacity, access to a particular set of skills. So we work very hard with our companies to really narrow those things down and make their ask as specific as possible. And then in that way, we can go out into the world and use our networks and our tools to find the most appropriate partner that fits their needs the best, which then of course benefits the partner as well. One of the other things that we can offer, especially through the Enterprise Europe network, is access to information and support around advice. So if a company in Canada needs information on GDPR regulations or laws or IP in a particular jurisdiction in Europe, well, it's unlikely, honestly, that I personally know those answers. I can go out in the network and find somebody who really does, and vice versa for European companies who have questions about Canada. So that's another kind of layer of partnering facilitation, because the more you know going into a partnership, then the better prepared you are.
Yeah, that's a really nice comment. So be more specific, narrow down what you need. It's more likely that you will actually find the right partner that takes the innovation to the next level. That's really great. I was thinking about moving on to Regina, because Regina, you have a long history of working with the innovation system as well as funding different kind of innovation projects. And I was thinking, from your experience, what would you say is the secret sauce for successful collaborations based on what we're discussing?
I think the answer to that would be quite basic. It's, you need to become friends, and how do you become friends? And I think that we have in the past tended to have, this more ad hoc events, and we try to, we want to show off Sweden, and we want to do something with Canada, we want to do something with Brazil, and we have these different kinds of events. But at the end of the day, the success stories that I have, both with Canada and Brazil, is that, you need to create an operational structure, and you need to become friends on an operational level. And this means to, pinpoint the right people, identify the right organization, create a group that meets on a regular basis to exchange, information, and create that, a first relationship that creates trust. And then, so that's the whole purpose of developing the Sweden-Canada Innovation Initiative. From Vinnova's perspective, has been to create a platform where we can help the Swedish actors and Canadian actors to meet, and to do so in a regular basis. So the day I stop working at Vinnova, not everything is dependent on my private or professional relationships with Canadians. It's more, you have a structure that someone else can take over, and that continues and that develops. So I've been working quite hard and with my colleagues that also have responsibilities for other countries to create this operational structure. So we make it easier for the Swedish and Canadian actors to meet on a regular basis, So we have, for example, the LinkedIn group, Sweden Canada Innovation Initiative, that is a platform for you guys to meet and also for us to communicate what's going on, what's happening, and to make it as easy as possible for you. So I think that becoming friends, but how do you do that? Yeah, you need to meet a couple of times. So where do you do that? Yes, in this platform that we're trying to create. So more or less.
That's really great. You provide a kind of platform or framework to actually meet, to build trust, and to nurture the relationship, to proceed to create innovation together.
Absolutely. And the thing is that is both on in the bilateral collaboration, but also on the national, because what we have done is we have these meetings 3 or 4 times a year, only focusing on all the Swedish actors that are interested in collaborating with Canada. And one of the purposes, of course, to inform them, but also to make them meet each other, because we are an industrial giant, but we're not that big country. There's a lot of other countries competing with us, knocking on Canada's door. So how can we become stronger together? So therefore, also on a national level and also in the bilateral, create this different platforms. So we can synchronize our activities and be stronger to the Canadian parts, and also meet Canadians on a regular basis.
That's really great. And talking about Canadians, I was thinking about asking David. David, you have a lot of experience from the Canadian startup scene, and we're discussing now to create kind of the platform and infrastructure to meet, to build trust, and to co-create. But what do you think is needed to foster a more collaborative approach in depth, so to speak, towards challenges related to sustainability? What's your thoughts on that one?
Yep. So I think I really like what Regina said about making friends, and it's several meetings and it's doing your due diligence. And what you don't want to have happen is a collaboration, especially between a big corporate partner and a startup. That's kind of like waking up one morning in Las Vegas after a drunk night and you're married to the person that's in bed next to you. And it seemed like a great idea last night, but today you're finding out that, gee, when I find this person may be from a very different background, culture, and I got really excited about the first look at things, but I have to think through a lot more of what the collaboration involves. And I think a lot of the time, both our startups and our corporate partners are looking for a very quick shortcut, quick way to get some technology, or a quick way to get, if you're a corporate, quick way to get money and established in the marketplace. And yet you come from such different worlds, you're going to start to disappoint each other very quickly because the cultures are so different. And we push hard on coaching our startups to do some due diligence and say, yeah, that they're all going to pretend they're interested the first time that you meet, probably, but go past that and say, can I see myself with this person or this organization working as a partner a year or two from now, and think through the consequences. And it's, sometimes you have to walk away from some good looking deals, and the smart companies and smart startups will do that. I fully agree with what you're saying, because my experience is also coming from the corporate side, that it's kind of a mindset journey you're on to really change the mindset on how to collaborate. And I think that we're meeting from a different corporate culture, but as well as kind of a history or a legacy where everybody was doing their own stuff and not really coming together and share the visions and goals and challenges and so on. So that's really interesting, and I think
that kind of journeys takes a couple of years to do that, to change that mindset, to change that culture, to change that DNA, really. And I was thinking about, Anneli, about the forestry cluster that you have. How do you experience, as you said in the introduction, you kind of maybe the newest participants in this kind of a collaboration. So how do you think this kind of platform has evolved for you guys working with the forest industry the last years?
Well, I think it's been amazing and super great for us and for our partners. We have extended what we call our innovation system with more and more people and more startups and more SMEs. And I think it was, I'm just gonna mention that, I think it was really interesting to listen to Martin and Logscom previously, because they are one of our new collaborators, or partners actually. I think it's interesting because we have followed Martin and Logscom for many years actually, and we have tried to pitch their idea to forest companies or forest machines manufacturers. And because you mentioned being friends and trying to make new friends, and that's what we do, but it's also very interesting to see when is it time, the maturity of a new idea, of a new solution, a new technical solution. That timing is, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. But I think you just have to keep working for it. And maybe if it wasn't the right time last year, maybe it's the right time now. Especially in the forestry industry, we were quite traditional. I don't know, compared to maybe the mining industry, maybe it's the same, but we're quite traditional, and it's hard to make that big change right away. So you have to hang in there. But I think that the results in this the project that I mentioned is, I could not imagine that we would get so many interesting startups to work with, and I think it's amazing, but we have to keep working for it. So you keep making new friends and you stay friends with the partners, so you don't forget them. I don't know if that was the question, Johan.
Your answer is more interesting than my question. Anyway, but I can fully understand looking into conventional industries to doing this kind of journey is could be a bit tougher, of course. And I think it's important to kind of aim big or dream big, but start small to take the first step on a journey towards the future. And I think I was thinking about you, Kathleen, and the Enterprise Europe network, which are connecting countries around research and innovations. And I think, what's your insights regarding those kind of cross-border collaborations? Is it even harder to do this kind of collaborations when you're in different countries? Or what's your insights or experience around this?
Unmute. I would say there are certainly some unique challenges to cross-border collaborations, sort of in the way that when your colleague is around the corner or down the hall, there's that interaction is just so much simpler. But I think with cross-border collaborations, because there are time differences, there are culture differences, there's language differences. The interaction and the development of friendships, and I think that really is crucial, is a lot more intentional. You have to set up the meeting, you have to be there, you have to know what you want to talk about. You have to be willing to ask the stupid questions, because I think that understanding is really key. And those cultural differences they're a little bit insidious sometimes, in that you might not think they're there, but they add up. So I think the communication and the thorough communication is really key. And then I think it also kind of comes back to trust, which, with the communication and the friendship, and you end up with the trust. And that's really the basis for the long-term cross-border collaborations. And you can end up with sort of building the relationship. As Annalie said, it's very important to make new connections, but it's also important to foster the old connections. So one of the companies that we've worked with for years, just as an example, they've done multiple research projects or technology development projects with companies in Germany. And eventually they set up an office in Germany. They now have staff in Germany. But it was a multi-year process that required them to sort of prove themselves within the German market and with their German colleagues. But because of that long-term sort of, I guess, engagement and fostering of a relationship, they were able to do it. And now not only do they have the cross-border relationship, but they actually have the presence in Germany as well.
Really interesting to hear. And I was thinking about we're talking a lot about creating platforms, trust, relationships. And I was thinking about David, who has been working closely to the innovators and the startups and so on. What do you think, David? What are the main challenges from your perspective related to applying solution and technology in a wider scale?
It still comes back to culture so much in terms of understanding. There's a great quote from Peter Drucker where he says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." No matter what you're planning, when you bring the cultures together, if you can't assist them to fit together nicely, the strategy won't matter, because the people aren't going to see it through. I think it's interesting as you go across borders. So I have one of my companies in fisheries that's doing some technology and some artificial intelligence. They started in the east coast of Canada, and they moved. Their second country was Norway, where they set up operations now. And I think maybe this idea of working with other countries probably makes you expect some difference in culture when you get there already. Whereas if you were to just go to another province in Canada, well, we should all be the same, or even if it's a big Canadian organization. So if you're prepared to look for some of those differences and work around them to get to your goal, then I think your collaborative process can go better. I also think do it once, sort of like learning another language or another culture. The first time it's hard to do, the second time it gets easier, and then 3 or 4. So there's clearly, it's like one more thing where experienced founders and startup executives are ahead on the learning curve. I don't want them making mistakes on my investment. I'd rather they learned it last time with someone else's investment. So really that openness to culture. I think the second factor for me that really helps have quick collaboration is if you're not looking to disrupt and upend the entire industry and the entire supply chain and the way things work, because there's so many parties with vested interests that are going to resist and fight you, even if they're smiling and saying, yes, we love you. Behind the scenes, maybe they don't love you so much so quickly in terms of how that works. So where you can fit straight into an existing stream and just patch on, or go right to a bottleneck without them having to affect huge things up and downstream, is a great place to start. And everyone thinks about the disruptive industry that's going to turn everything on its head, but most of them that succeed and get good collaboration make a small, valuable input and fit right in. Sorry, long answer, Johan.
But a really good one, I believe, because I really like that to see collaboration pretty much like a language It's a mindset, it's a culture and all that. Because if you're doing it right, from my point of view, ecosystem of partners and startups and potential collaboration is actually a great way of applying technologies such as AI, automation, and blockchain, and so on. And it's kind of an untapped potential around that. It's massive from my point of view to get new competencies and new technology into your company. So that's it's an important language to learn, you could say. I wanted to ask you, Regina. You have been involved in a lot of funding of different pilots and projects and so on. Do you have any example in mind that have added real value to the society or a specific end customer or so on?
Well, I've only worked at Vinnova with the international perspective, and of course, I mean, I have examples, but actually not from Canada, but with Brazil, where we have innovation. Oh, actually, it was matchmaking corporate startups that ended up for one of the startups being part of a huge bioeconomy project in Brazil. And so that's actually the only example. It doesn't really answer your question because that's an up and running project right now. But it is, from our perspective as an innovation agency supporting this, it's a great example of how we managed to get a very small startup from Sweden to connect with huge and important actors in Brazil. Focusing on bioeconomy and paper that is very, very important both for the Swedish industry and in Brazil. So that's the only example I have right now. Not that many years working with Brazil, but we're moving ahead.
Perfect. And I wanted to ask you, related to that, Kathleen, if since you're working a lot with cultivating the ecosystems and so on, what do you think is necessary to do to boost the throughput and value creation in kind of already existing infrastructures around innovation?
Oh, you think I would have learned the last time? No. I think one of the things that is really crucial, and I think David really hit the nail on the head with the encouraging small, meaningful steps, and along the lines of bringing companies to a very focused point about what it is they want, what they feel they can reasonably achieve, so that they're approaching their partner with something that is feasible, that will make a difference, that has a social and an economic impact, a solid business case. It's not a pie in the sky idea. It's something that really is grounded and has a chance for success. So to help, I guess, to help kind of form each case in that way increases the chance of success for each one. And then the more successful partnerships, you just kind of move them through the chain. So I think really putting together all of the advice that we've been discussing today through forming relationships and getting specific with your needs and making sure that the goals are realistic and that there is a business case and there is a need for the technologies that are being developed will ultimately just increase the deal flow, sort of the speed and success of projects.
That's great. Really interesting. Thank you. I see our time is soon over for this session. So I just wanted to ask the four of you and last kind of open question, because we have been discussing a lot about building relations, building trust, the platform, the framework for need, the thing about culture and mindset and learning new languages related to collaboration. And this event itself is a way of starting that kind of relationship between Sweden and Canada. So if we find opportunities for tech collaborations between Sweden and Canada, where can we find financing or fundings for those kind of initiatives? I just leave it open like that for all four of you.
Can I jump in with a thought on funding? Because it's interesting when we talk to startups and say, what's your biggest barrier? Of course, they say it's money. When we're working with Siemens or General Electric or huge corporations on innovation, and we ask the staff, what's your biggest barrier? They say it's money, which is incredible if you've worked in a startup, because the big corporation has so much resources apparently. But I think when they come together, if they realize what they have that they may take for granted, that the other one is so short of, and they have lots. So a big corporation can provide access to a market trial, validation and things. It probably doesn't cost them much money, and they can do it. Connections into the industry, extra expertise and things that are extremely hard to come by for the startup venture. Meanwhile, the startup venture doesn't have a regular day job while they're trying to innovate at night on like the corporate employee. They have nothing to do for 16 hours except think about this innovation and new project that they're doing, because if it doesn't work, they won't have a job. So they're incredibly focused. And I think if you can bring those two together, and sometimes it's contribution in kind of what each side has to offer, yes, it's still going to take some funding needs, but by collaborating properly with each doing what they're good at and letting the other part do what they're terrible at, the project doesn't need as much funding. That's why it's so expensive for a big corporation to innovate, because they can't do anything in a simple way. Sorry, that's a much longer discussion, but I think there's value that's not in dollars.
Good. I fully agree. How about you, Regina?
Well, what we have seen in the bilateral collaborations is that, you know, this getting to know each other phase is very important, and usually it creates so much more. It creates, you know, it starts the networks, and it creates collaborations further on. So mobility has been a very important part, and therefore Vinnova has an open call right now focusing on mobility between individuals. So, you know, a company in Sweden can apply for funding for sending one of their staff to Canada to be there from 1 month up to 6 months, and to learn as much as possible. And this is within the area of applied AI, and that can be definitely within this area that we're talking about today, or either the Swedish company applies for funding from Vinnova to pinpoint an expert from Canada to be able to come to Sweden. And we have one project up and running with Concordia University in Canada, and KTH, the Royal Research Institute in Sweden, and Ericsson right now. And then, of course, Vinnova puts in a lot of money in the Eureka program. And there we have several joint calls with Canada focusing on the part of Eureka that's called Eurostar. And Eurostar focuses on the SMEs. And I really like that program since it's really bottom up, and the SME is in the driver's seat. You can have industry participating, and I think it's NRC IRAP in Canada that is, you know, this in the panel definitely. So they are responsible for that. So those are the calls that we have right now up and running.
That's great. Thank you so much. Finally, Anneli or Katalin, any comments related to the funding opportunities?
Yeah, I have one more to add. So in Alberta, which is the province where my organization is located, we do have a provincially funded program, the Alberta Europe Technology Collaboration Fund, which is run through my organization, where we can support Albertan participants with up to 250,000 Canadian dollars to undertake projects together with Swedish companies. And then, you know, if they're able to find funding on the Swedish side, that's wonderful. If not, as long as they sort of kick in sort of that either cash or in kind, but approximate value, then we can still support the Alberta side. So for any companies in Alberta or any Swedish companies that are interested in collaborating with Albertan companies, I would encourage them to keep that one in mind. For companies outside of Alberta, as Regina mentioned, NRC IRAP is definitely the go-to. And then there's also the Can Export and Can Export Innovation programs run by our Trade Commissioner Service.
Great, thank you. I should also mention, I got it in the chat, that if you're interested to more support, you can get in contact with Christina Kagren on Business Sweden. Her contact is in the chat and to learn more about that program. So a short wrap up of today's session. Thank you, first of all, to the amazing startups that was pitching. Thank you to an exceptional panel of a lot of experience. Great work. Thank you for your insights. And thank you for all you listening in. The forest and the mining industry is essential for our future. Let's collaborate more. The relationships we started, let's nurture it and develop it even more, build trust and innovate together. Thank you all for being part of this. See you.
Thank you very much. Great event.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.